This is Michael Tucker, and you're watching the new Legends on Deck podcast with host Brian Koss and David Conde.
All right, let me hear you good and loud, everyone.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to episode 37 of the Legends on Deck podcast. I'm Brian Koss, along with my co-host David Conde. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, visiting ballparks, a lifelong passion of mine. So our guest is Anna DiTommaso. And Anna is the founder of Ballpark Bucket List and the Baseball Bucket List. She's the host of the Baseball Bucket List podcast. Really cool website that she's going to talk to us about today. Anna, welcome to the show.
Well, hi guys. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with y'all, and just really glad that y'all made time to have me on.
And we got a comment real quick, and we were talking about this before we started recording here, but that wall of hats we're very envious of this.
I took some time, they're like perfectly spaced and a lot of mess ups and start overs and color groupings and cool stuff like that. But yeah, I'm glad y'all like it.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
So how we get started normally when we bring on the other guests, we ask about their background in the game. It's a little bit of a different type of podcast this time, this episode. So the question I have for you, how did your passion for the game start of baseball? Like, where did it start? And then how did it get going? Like, what drove it?
Yeah, I mean, I owe it all to my dad. I think it's a similar story that I share with a lot of people. My dad, I think similar to Brian, grew up in the Detroit area and was a rabid Detroit Tigers fan as a kid. And so I grew up here just outside of Dallas, and he took me to the ballpark as I was a kid, just over and over. I basically grew up in the ballpark in Arlington watching the 1990 Rangers with the Pudge Rodriguez, Juan Gonzalez, Rusty Greer. Fell in love with the game that way. I mean, it was just my favorite place to be, and kind of fell out of touch with the game a little bit as I got older and got into some other stuff. But in the early 2000s, my dad took a job in Sarasota, Florida, which is like an hour south of Tampa, St. Pete area. So, from then on out, kind of fell in love with the Tampa Bay Rays and would still consider them my team to this day, even though I find myself back in the DFW Metro, kind of closer to the Rangers.
So wait a minute. So you're not really like looking at the Rangers. I mean, I think they're in first place. I think DeGrom is like 10-0. Not really. I mean, I have to. Listen, I'm a Met fan, so I have to say something about DeGrom. Okay, but anyway. So you. Oh, well, then again, the Rays are what, like?
Yeah, the Rays are the best team.
35 and 10.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't lose whichever team you pick.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what kind of led you to your passion that you're doing with your website and the podcast? So what led to that? What really said, hey, this is what I want to do? How did that take off?
Yeah, so growing up as a fan of one team and really only going to one ballpark over and over again, I did make it down to the Astrodome as a kid because my favorite player, like, we talk about that home run chase between Sosa and McGuire.
Yeah.
Sammy is my guy. I was watching him every single day, and my parents got us tickets to go see the Cubs come to town against Houston at the Astrodome. And so for a big portion of my life, those were the only two ballparks that I had ever gotten a chance to visit. And as we moved to Florida, I obviously started spending some time at Tropicana Field. And in 2008, my dad and I took like a 2-week trip up to the Northeast, and we hit those 5 ballparks up there in that cluster. And we were sitting at Nationals Park. It was our last park for the trip. And we kind of looked at each other and we were like, this is cool. Like, maybe we should try to hit all 30, you know?
Mhm.
So we both kind of decided we were going to do that. It's not something we've been able to tackle together. You know, he lives in South Carolina. I'm obviously in Texas, so it's difficult to find time to make trips like that together anymore. But that was really what started the idea of like, okay, all 30 major league ballparks, like that's kind of a lot, but also not unattainable. So like, let's try to do it and let's try to do it before I turn 30. So the idea was 30 by 30, all 30
Mhm.
ballparks before I turned 30. And I made it with about 2 weeks to spare.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the last one I kicked off was 2018. It was, I think it was Truist at the time, or it was SunTrust at the time. It's Truist now
Yeah,
up in
Mhm.
Atlanta. So yeah.
that's very cool. So
Yeah.
that's a great ballpark to finish with too. I was there a few years ago.
Yeah.
Well, Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
The Mets fan coming out of
yeah.
it.
So let me ask you a question. When you saw Sammy, did you see a home run?
Sammy didn't even play. Man, I was
Oh.
devastated.
Ah.
He had the day off. I think he came in, he did pinch hit in like, I don't know, like the 8th or 9th inning. And I think he hit this, what would have been a home run, but it ended up going foul. But yeah, he wasn't in the starting lineup. And I was like, you know, as a little kid, just devastated over it. I was throwing a fit and I didn't understand why. And yeah, so that's my memory of the Astrodome.
Mm.
What that time when they had the home run chase? I mean, were you glued to the TV? I mean,
Oh,
wasn't it the most exciting time at that time? It just felt like, you didn't know who was gonna hit what. I mean, I was following it too. I was a fan of baseball. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, I didn't have any Mets hitting home runs like that at the time. But anyway,
Mhm.
but it was just an awesome to chase just to see that.
I think it saved baseball for a lot of people. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people were kind of like 1 foot out the door. I don't necessarily care about this sport anymore. And then all of a sudden you have, you know, these two guys who are just every day adding something more to even just the regular game. You know, the Cardinals could lose the game, but everybody might go home happy because McGuire hit number 61.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and I
funny
think the strike.
that
Okay, okay.
go ahead.
We all talk
Yeah,
over each
we're
other.
gonna go on the same thing. Like you go first. You go first.
Well, my point was, I think the strike is what kind of killed it.
Hmm.
That season. I think that season, for me, the Mets were in first. I think the Yankees were in first, and it was looking like a good season. And then the strike happened, and everybody was like, "Well, like I'm not dealing with this." And I think that kind of brought a lot of fans back to how exciting the game could be. With the home run chase. I mean, it was just like it was amazing every single day. Just watching the TV, waiting for the next one, waiting for the next one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
checking the newspaper the next morning. Like, I'm not sure I would know how to read if it weren't for the home run chase, because I would just, you know, those games were on past my bedtime and I wasn't necessarily allowed to stay up and watch them. But the next morning, you better believe I was like, did Sammy hit one? Did he do it?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I was what article I wrote this past week. I was kind of reflecting on all my baseball memories, and we may be around the same age. I may be a few years older than you. But 1997 was the race, right?
I think it was 98, wasn't it?
98. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. The strike was 94.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, so 94, I was 10,
Yeah.
and then 98. So you go for a few years later. So I'm 14, but I remember that for me the strike didn't phase me at all. The only thing that bothered me about the strike was we had tickets to go see the Orioles in Camden Yards when it was brand new
Yeah.
that summer, and we couldn't go. So I was like, this stinks. Like, when are they going to start the season again? Like, it was more like, okay, I lost the season. Okay, now I got to watch football in the fall, and I got to wait for baseball again. So, but I know a ton of people that, especially people, maybe not kids, but some kids and people of an older age, after the strike, were like, we're done with baseball.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So,
I don't think I necessarily knew what was going on, you know, as a kid,
mhm,
but I know that like my dad was not pleased with it, and he was the one who decided if I was going to go to a baseball game or not.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was just, but that I think that's true that the home run chase 98 really, really revived people's interest. Unfortunately, it's kind of the whole era has been kind of stained by the steroids at this point.
Mhm.
But to me, that memory is still there. I mean, I hate to say it doesn't matter to me that they took steroids, but at the same time, I'm like, that was so cool that the steroids don't overshadow that to me.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, maybe others feel different, but I don't. But going into the next, my as I kind of segue into that, so I mentioned, Oriole Park at Camden Yards when that came out, and that whole era. I was around the 10-year. That was about, I was 9, 10 years old. When I was a kid, like I mentioned, I grew up in Detroit area. Went down to Tiger Stadium quite a bit as a kid. We lived maybe 30 minutes from the city. Would go in and had those great memories from Tiger Stadium. It was one of those classic ballparks. You had, in my opinion, at the time, you had Fenway, you had Wrigley, you had Yankee Stadium, and you had Tiger Stadium, and those were all the ballparks left from those early 1900s era. So those were cool memories for me. But what we also did is we took road trips, as a family in the summer after our little league season was over, and we would go and wherever we went, we somehow wrapped a couple of one or two ballparks around that trip. So those were, memories for me. I mean, I started filling in things on your website. I haven't finished yet. I had to recount with my dad some of the parks that we did visit.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I've been to PNC and Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh, both of them. And I've been to both Cincinnati ballparks, when they built the new one. Atlanta, I've been to all three.
That's cool.
So I've been to Fulton County, I've been to Turner Field, and I've been to the new one. So, kind of based on their travels. But can you explain to our listeners a little bit more about the cool website that you've created with the baseball bucket list and kind of how the podcast that you run too complements that website?
Yeah. Thank you. So baseballbucketlist.com is, I would consider it, like Facebook, but for baseball fans. It's a online community with some cool tools to kind of help you guys plan, your next baseball adventure. So each user can sign up for free. There's no cost to join, and you get your own profile, which you can build out your baseball bucket list, which is, basically a collection of all of the things that you would like to do or have done, and you kind of just check them off as you go along and can upload photos, maybe write up a little bit of information on, the experience or kind of what you think it might be like. So that's one component of it. The other component is each member, we call the members bucket heads. They get their own ballpark tracking map. So what that is on your profile, there's a map. It's a Google map essentially, and you pen each ballpark that you've been to. It has all ballparks. So, you mentioned being at all 3 Atlanta ballparks. You can pen all 3 of those. And it kind of just keeps track of where you're at, how many you've been to. I encourage people to add whatever ballpark they want. They can add minor league parks. They can add indie ball. They can add defunct stadiums. They could add their little league field if they want. There's no police in terms of what a ballpark visit counts as. So those are the 2 big factors. And then the coolest part of it is just the community that it's building. You're getting all these like-minded people together. I'm getting images sent to me from, bucket heads meeting up in person, catching games together, and doing all sorts of really cool stuff. And it's just been incredible. So it's been a blast. So that's the website side. And then you asked about the podcast, which was just the natural progression of things. It's one thing to sit and read these stories and see photos from people's experiences, things. And then it's another to hear that individual recount the story verbally. And so the show's a weekly, every Thursday podcast. I talk to a different baseball fan each week, and we discuss kind of their favorite baseball memories, how they got started with the game, and what's next to check off and what they really want to get after.
It's so cool because it's like you're David and I, we interview a lot of different people with a lot of different baseball backgrounds. We've done general managers, we've done players, coaches, all that stuff, right? So we've got you on today, and just we got a variety. But you're interviewing, you're talking to fans about their experience. It's a whole different angle that I think is really unique and a lot of fun, because everyone, those of us that love going to baseball games, that love going to ballparks, we want to share that with somebody else that appreciates it.
Yeah.
I was laughing the other day. I told some friends of mine that I was having you on my show, and I'm like, they told me, they said, well, you got to bring up our ballparks and breweries tour from so when I was in college, we used to, my few of my buddies and I used to take trips too. And we did a tour from Detroit to our first stop was St. Louis. We went to the Budweiser facility, and then we went to the Cardinals game. Then we drove up to Chicago, stopped off, saw the White Sox in the afternoon, and got to Milwaukee. And we did the Miller facilities that day, and then hit the Brewers game, and then we came home. So we actually made T-shirts that said ballparks and breweries on it, and with our dates listed. So, it's just those stories and those unique experiences that people come up with. Everybody has, a different angle on it and has fun with it, does different things for different reasons. And I'm glad you're able to capture that in a website. I mean, like I said, I started to play with the website and start plugging things in. I'll probably spend a lot more time over the summer going through my memories of where I've been and all that. But thank you for doing that. It's really cool.
Yeah, I thank you for jumping in there and kind of helping to spread the word and collect memories. I think that's, to your point, a lot of people might not remember the score of a game, but they'll remember the conversation they had with their buddy. They'll remember the beers they tried, and I think it's great.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome. As you guys are talking, I actually kind of perused through the site a little bit, signed on right now, but I kind of remember my mom is the one that kind of brought me through the game. I have a Mets hat on when I was probably 5 years old. In a picture I saw that, and actually I'm going to be 50 next week, so I kind of forgot 94 was not a good year for the Mets, so I messed that one. It was a good year for the Yankees, but I guess
the Yankees are the ones that got cut off that year. That was their
Yankees
year.
got cut off, not the Mets. We got cut off later. But I remember my mom taking me in '86 when the Mets won the World Series. Now, we didn't go to the park, but we got to go to the parade and everything. And then in '88, I believe it was when Sosa hit the home run off of Dwight Gooden. I was at that game.
Oh,
and I was sitting there with my mom in the stands, just her and I watching the game. It was amazing. And then, years passed by, and I would go to games here and there. And then the next time we went back to the stadium again together was when Citi Field was created in 2009. I came up from Florida. My son was like, I think 5 years old, I think. And we went to Citi Field with my mom. So it was the first time that I got to experience it with my son, my mom, my stepdad, and my wife. And then my son gets up and starts singing, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And I just sat there watching him like, oh my God, this is great. Like we got to all experience that together. And I actually got to write about it, and MLB Magazine posted it. That was my first writing experience. Like, this is great.
Oh, cool.
But it was amazing to have that experience, and it's now good. I guess I can go share that on your site, right? I can kind of write all that up.
Exactly. That's the idea, man. That's exactly the type of story that I love to hear. I think it's, I hear stories like that so often. Or I just talked to a guy who one of his favorite memories was, like when he was a kid, his dad busted him out of school for opening day and took him to.
I did that too.
Yeah, and so
I went to opening day in Detroit every year for years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I love that. Like my parents let me do that. I got to skip school a day, and then so I think it's cool when parents then get to do that with their own kids after that was an experience they had with their mom or dad. And I mean, it's just like it gets me right in the feels, and I'm like, okay, that's why I love this game. It doesn't matter if the Rays lost today. I just love this game for those moments right there.
Yeah, it's funny when the Mets won the World Series, so we watched it at home. And then the next day, my mother's like, "Okay, you're not going to school. Just make sure you get your stuff together. We gotta go." We got to the parade early. I mean, we got there way before they even started. We're just staying. We have front row seats. I still have photos. And then when I got back to school the next day, I went to a Catholic grammar school. Okay, and I had nuns. Okay, so when I got back, all the kids were like, "We know where you were at. We know you weren't sick. and we were actually watching it on TV, seeing if we can find you.
They see you right up front. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's no hiding that.
my mom was like, "I'll deal with the nuns. You're going to the parade. That's it. I don't want to hear nothing about it." So it was
I
awesome.
love that so much. I love that.
Too funny.
Can you share with us some of your personal journey in the ballparks, like the ones? I mean, you shared a little bit earlier the ones you've gone with your dad, but what is maybe one of the you walk in, you're like, oh my God, this is the Mecca, and don't say Yankee Stadium.
Oh no. It's
you can if you want. I'm just joking. Yeah.
No, that's not my answer. And I've been to both. I had been to Old Yankee in 2008. The last year it was in existence, and then the next year I went to Yankee Stadium, the new one. So neither one of those would be in my top. I do have to say, like, it's an obvious answer. I think if you ask a lot of ball fans like what their favorite ballpark is, they're gonna say PNC, and I think it's for good reason. Yeah, beautiful view. The night I was there was just like perfect weather. One of those nights where you just don't want it to end, like I couldn't care less about what was happening on the field. The Pirates lost, but they made it interesting. But I mean, it was just like I was just sitting there looking around. You have this beautiful backdrop. I'm chatting with these season ticket holders who have like brought this food in, and they're like passing it around to everybody. And it was just like this is as close to like zen as I'm probably ever gonna get, and like I just don't want this evening to end. And again, it was very little to do with the actual game happening on the field, and more about kind of the environment and the buzz around it. And that's just the experience I have over and over at baseball, and it's something that I can't replicate at other sporting events. Like I attend other games and things like that, but it's just not the same. So I don't know what it is. It's just the people are better, I think.
Yeah, I've been to PNC 2, maybe 3 times, and it was only Pittsburgh from Detroit. It was about a 6-hour drive, so it wasn't too bad to get there. But what I recall about that ballpark, and well, it's like you said, the views, the bridge in the background, all that kind of stuff. But they even, outside the stadium prior to the games, there's a lot of activity going on. And then the seating in the ballpark, it's like you can't really get a bad seat there. Right. The way that they constructed it, it feels like wherever you're sitting it's a nice seat. It's just a very, very comfortable park.
Definitely, yeah.
Before they opened up Citi Field, I think in 2009. So my cousin was living in Delaware. He said, "Hey, you got to come to a Phillies game." And I'm like, "Why?" Okay, I'll go. So we went. They were playing the Giants, and literally we walked around, and I hardly sat down.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God, you can see the field from every angle. It was just like this brand new stadium. It was amazing. But the one thing that I guess it's different from the old. Okay, you visited the old Shea Stadium, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you visited Citi Field. You felt like you were on top of the ball players at Shea Stadium. You felt like the everything was rocking, and then the new stadium, you just felt like it's kind of a further away, but you got a better view of everything. Like you felt like, oh my God, I can see the whole field. Except for Yankee Stadium, I think you sit behind a wall. You can't see the other side of it.
Yeah, the old ballparks had the big pillars. They had the big pillars. Like that's Tiger Stadium. You're like, wow, you're sitting behind a pole today.
Right, yeah. And Fenway is still like that. And
right, Fenway.
Yeah, every once in a while you see someone who like didn't do their research and they're sitting like literally in front of a pillar.
Why did he even have a seat there? I don't understand.
I know, right? People buy it, I guess.
It's like for the experience of just sitting in front of a pole and looking at the game side to side.
Yeah. Do you know what one of my favorite things about Shea Stadium was? And I feel like it kind of got a bad rep before they tore it down was and I don't know if this was just where we were sitting this one evening, but we were only in a row with 2 other people. So like instead of an aisle with 30 seats where if you're in the middle and you want to go get a beer or something, you've got to bother 15 people. Yeah. It was like almost like a movie theater, where like you're just sitting with 2 people. And so I thought that was pretty cool. But
I think because of the angle of the stands, right? The way it kind of angled out, you got lucky.
Yeah, that might have been it. Yeah.
Yeah. What independent or minor league stadiums have you visited and felt like, wow, this is a great setup, or just a view or the zen of it?
Yeah. So after I finished the major league ballparks, it was kind of like one of those moments where you just look around and you're like, okay, like, oh, what am I
What do
going
I
to
do?
do? Yeah. So I had been to, I mean, I obviously live in the Dallas area. We have the Frisco Rough Riders, the Double A affiliate of the Texas Rangers, 45 minutes from my house. And I had been to that ballpark multiple times, but I started to kind of look at minor league baseball through a different lens at that point in time, and indie ball too. And I think that like it's almost as if I had had the realization about minor league baseball that I did before I went to all 30 ballparks. I might have just been like, I don't even need to worry about doing that, because I think that minor league baseball is like baseball's here, and then minor league baseball is like even somehow better than just baseball at all, because it's just this microcosm of the community of these kids who are, dreaming the big dream to get up to the next level. And um the community is so much more involved in these local teams, the minor league teams. It really does feel like it is the team of the community. And the ballparks are great. Obviously, if you get major league money to kind of sink into them, that helps. But so yeah, I've started kind of venturing more out towards minor league ballparks here recently, and working on the Texas ones because they're easy to check off. And then of course, anytime I travel somewhere, St. Paul Saints I've been to. Um, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Obviously, some of the Florida teams, the Bradenton Marauders. It's kind of similar, to what you were saying earlier about planning vacations around baseball. Like that's something I still do. So
Well,
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
awesome, like you said, with the community, right? So you in major with the major league teams, normally you got the players are there, they're the known players, they stay with the
mm,
teams if they sign whatever. And then the minor league guys are always shifting, but the fans are always like so behind every single guy that's there. It
yeah.
doesn't matter if he's there for 3 games. Oh, we love him and they root for him and everything. And then he goes on and he was, wow, I was welcomed by this team and I was only there 5 days, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like we literally just took my nephew to the Rough Riders game last night, and we saw a grand slam. The Rough Riders were down 6-0. We saw a grand slam, and I looked at him and I said, "Do you know how lucky you are? Do you know how many games I had to go to before I saw a grand slam? And you're sitting here on this lawn, and like it just landed right over there." And he doesn't know any different. That could have been Corey Seager hitting a grand slam at Globe Life Field, and for
Exactly.
him, he was right there and he saw it. So I think it makes it so much more accessible to kids too.
Do you feel like the factors that go into the minor league games kind of bring the excitement out because there's just more entertainment in between the innings. There's more kind of going on. Major league games more the professional. There's
Yeah.
some entertainment, but minor league baseball you can actually have a party and still enjoy baseball.
Yeah. No, that's 100% right. Like last night, there were all these minor or these youth teams there,
Yeah.
like they're all in their little uniforms and hanging out, and they're aware that there's a baseball game going on, obviously, but they just want to hang out with their friends. And I think again, like minor league teams, in order to stay alive, they have to be entertaining. They've gotta be a fun thing that kids are begging mom and dad. Like, I want to go back to see the Rough Riders play. I want to go see the Railroaders play. Like, let's go back there where MLB is much more buttoned up and corporate, and they're gonna
Mhm.
get their big money from the big guys regardless. So yeah, I love that component of it too. It's so much more like family friendly, entertaining, and a good level of baseball too, usually.
Have you seen the Field of Dreams?
Have I seen well the movie, or like been there, like
No,
the
been there.
actual?
Sorry, I'm
No.
sorry, been
No,
there.
no, not yet. Not yet. I want to get out there. I definitely do, up to Dyersville, but I haven't made it out there yet. Have you? Either of you?
No, just I've
No,
only seen the movie.
no.
Yeah.
The
Um,
I
movie
thought you
and
would.
the
the
live game.
Yeah.
they're investing in the field though. They're creating more of it because they're doing that annual game out there.
Hmm.
That would definitely be on my bucket list. College World Series is also high on my bucket list as well. Getting out to Omaha.
Yeah.
Uh, but what's interesting with the ballparks, that if you look at it now, like I'm thinking, we're talking from the time that we're kids till now, almost every ballpark out there has been replaced. Um, there's very few left. You've got, like you've got your Wrigley's and your Fenways that seem that they're sticking around, but most of them have been replaced, and there was that trend, I think, early on in the early 90s with Camden Yards, and then there was Jacobs Field in Cleveland, and then when they built the new stadium in Detroit, they did the same thing. But it was to bring the ballpark into the core of the city, and then kind of try to revive the area that may have, fallen apart over the years, or gotten to be a worse neighborhood. And it was kind of an urban renewal strategy, right? But then I would say recently the opposite has happened. And you may, be able to speak to that as somebody that lives in the Dallas area. With Arlington. Arlington's been that way a while. So they've always been outside the city. But Atlanta did the same thing with Truist Park, was SunTrust and now Truist, I believe.
Yeah.
But they built it in the suburbs. And when I read about why they did what they did with that ballpark, they said they did a circumference around the area and said, where are the majority of our season ticket holders? And they said, well, they're here, so let's make it easy for them to get there, and we'll sell more season tickets. But I haven't been to the Arlington Park, Globe Life, but I have been to the Atlanta Stadium, and I say they did a fantastic job building an atmosphere around the stadium. Both. I'm not saying one trend is good and one trend is bad necessarily, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think of the older ballparks. I think of Fenway and Wrigley and the Jake, right?
Yeah.
I know it's not old, but I'm thinking of
It
these
seems
downtown.
in the new era that it's an older park, right?
Yeah, right. And the ballparks that you walk up on through the city, right? Like Busch Stadium is another one. And you like there's something about that energy of being surrounded by all those people and they're making their way to this one central location that it's so funny because like I'll find myself on a way to a game in a downtown area and I'll be like walking with her and I'm like, man, this is how baseball's supposed to be, And then I'll go to like Battery Park and in the Atlanta suburb and I'll look around and I'll see all these people sitting at the bars beforehand and I'll be like, man, this is how baseball's supposed to be. So
Right.
like catch me on any given day, my opinion kind of sways, but
Sure.
yeah, I think it's interesting. I think what's happening is we're starting to see teams focus more on like the developmental side and not necessarily like player development, but like real estate. They're trying to buy land. They want to have a stake in some of the residential areas, the commercial areas around these ballparks. And so I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm kind of waiting to see. I don't know. Like Atlanta did a good job with the Battery. I agree with you there. But I know that they hurt a lot of feelings and a lot of fans by moving away from Atlanta. Like how are they the Atlanta Braves if they play in Cumberbach or whatever the Cumberland, something that whatever the suburb is.
Up in Cobb County. It's a county north. I think it might be Marietta. I'm not sure exactly.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
But and yeah, it's interesting. You're right, because you're pulling out of one area and you're going into another. Well, it's the fan base is I grew up in the Detroit area, but I did not grow up in Detroit.
Yeah.
So the fan base is kind of the entire metropolitan area. So I guess that was their strategy. But what's the feel? I've never been, like I said, I've not been to Dallas. I've not been to Arlington. They built the ballpark, all three ballparks that have been there, they were all in the same area, right?
Yeah.
And the Cowboys too are there.
Yeah. Yeah. The Cowboys moved in the I want to say around the same time that like Yankee Stadium was closing down. They moved out. They used to be in Irving. Ironically, never played in Dallas. So and now they're out in Arlington. And yeah, it's like a compound. It has a very similar feel to Philadelphia, which we talked about earlier, where all the things are just kind of like right there, or like Arrowhead and Kaufman are next door to each other. So yeah, you have the new Globe Life Field, the old Globe Life Park, which I will still refer to as the ballpark in Arlington, and then it's called Texas Live, which is very similar. It's the same concept of the Battery out in Atlanta, and I think there's another one in St. Louis now, which was added after I had been to that ballpark, where you have like the baseballism store, you have several bars and restaurants, and they'll have pre-game stuff there, post-game stuff. And then there's a hotel, and then
Yep.
Arlington or AT&T Park is it's a little bit of a walk, but it's still within walking distance. So you have all of this stuff kind of in the same thing. And depending on what's going on, there's always so many people there. And like the energy levels are high. They're much higher than they ever were when it was just the ballpark in Arlington sitting kind of in this field alone,
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's a place I like to go. I like to get there early to spend time and hang out and meet up with friends there before we head into the park. So it's definitely neat. I don't think Texas or Dallas, the DFW area, was ever going to get a downtown ballpark of any kind. I just don't think there's room for it.
Sure.
Well, that's also what you guys are sharing with the like you said, being at I guess Fenway has the bars there, and I've been to Fenway from the outside, never went in. I guess like Atlanta, I guess the area because they built up the area to have bars, restaurants. Like City Field is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like there's, there's no. They're supposed to get rid of those cars and build that up, but it's kind of like I've always heard that like every other city has that, and then you go to City Field and it's like you just showing up to the park. There's nowhere to meet up. There's nowhere to do anything other than the parking lot, and then go in and do and entertain yourself within the stadium.
Yeah.
So if more stadiums could do that and have that city like community feel of coming together, having a party beforehand, and going to watch a game, I think that would just draw in more fans and just to show up to a baseball field.
It seems to be working, honestly speaking. Like obviously the Rangers are good this year. They have not been historically great in this new ballpark. I think they've been no hit in it twice already. And but people are turning out because they've got live music playing next door. They've got all this other stuff going on. They'll put the Cowboys game up, and people will still come hang out there. So I think that the team is still getting some traction, even though that's usually outside of baseball season. But the one thing I don't like about it is it still has like, it's very cool, but it still has a very like corporate and master planned feel to it, as opposed to like the old school community bars that have been in Wrigleyville or around Fenway for years and years and years. You have like PBR bar or some, Miller sponsored patio, or it's just very like sponsored and kind of forced. Not that stops me from going. I'm still there.
No, I know what you mean. You don't have like the guy that's owned, in Wrigleyville there, a guy that's owned some local family, owned bar that's been there for 100 years.
Exactly.
It's not the same. It's not the same thing, but
better than a parking lot, I have to say.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to experience the community field and to just show up in a parking lot that's packed and takes 5 hours to get out of there, and and you get the game, but then afterwards you're just going home. I mean, I've visited the city since I've been in Florida, City Field back, but it's just not. I think Yankee Stadium has more of that, like a local bar there, and it's been there a little bit. That's still fun. But anyway, I'm in an area in Florida where we have. I'm southwest by Cape Coral, so we don't have anything but spring training, and then some of the minor league stadium, which is I love minor league baseball. Yeah. It's the purity of the game, and the kids get to I get to sit there, and my kids just run off because they don't want to watch it because they think it's boring, but it's still a great baseball game. So with you being in the Dallas area, we're being in Florida. If you're going to advise somebody who is interested in building a bucket list, like where would they start? What's the first thing they should do? Like I'm on the site and I see this, like you said, Facebook style type of thing. Like, how do they get started to really get involved in being a part of your community?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing to do is just go to baseballbucketlist.com, and from there you can sign up for a membership. You don't have to be a member to kind of browse the site. There's a way for you to kind of see what other members are up to. You can see which ballparks they've been to. You can see what their bucket list items are. You can listen to the show, listen to folks, recount their ballpark adventures and share some tips about the parks they've been to, the things they've done, how they've planned things out. So that's the best way to find out more about the site and kind of, get started as a bucket head. But if you're serious about planning a trip, I would say try to find a clustered area, like my I caught this bug when my dad and I went to the Northeast, and we hit 5 ballparks in about 10 days. So you can do it up there. You can do it in California is another good one to check off 5 for now.
Mhm.
And that's a good way to start.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, it is kind of fun when you're in a, Detroit wasn't bad because we would, the Midwest, there's enough teams.
Yeah.
So 2 Chicagos, Milwaukee, the 2 in Ohio, Toronto's not far, Pittsburgh. So it was easy to check off a lot of them in the Midwest. Here in Florida, like I'm in Orlando. I'm about 2 hours from Tropicana, which my son and I went out to a game last summer. It was his and my first experience there. I've been in Florida for 7 years, and I've been meaning to go, but I like David, I end up going to mostly minor league parks.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you, I was much more positive on Tropicana than I went in leaving than I was going in. Right. So I always hear Tropicana's worst stadium in Major League Baseball, yada, yada, yada. I will tell you, sorry, Chicago White Sox fans, that's the worst stadium in Major League Baseball. That place is not the most fan-friendly ballpark. But nevertheless, I was pleasantly surprised by what I saw at Tropicana. I mean, a lot of updates, fan engagement, a lot of these things that were going on there. Although there's a very serious hunt for a new ballpark in the Tampa Bay area. Have you been following that at all?
Oh yeah, every day.
Yeah. What would your dream? I just kind of off the cuff question, but being a Rays fan, what would your dream location be in the Tampa Bay area for a ballpark?
I don't think I'm gonna get it, but and I haven't lived there it's been 12, 13 years now. So they've got to go north. I think, as someone who lives south of the St. Pete metro, I would hate to see that because it was already a long drive for me to get up there. But I think they've got to go north where, the Bucks have been successful. You've got Amley where the Tampa Bay Lightning play, and they've had tremendous success drawing fans. I like Ybor. I like Ybor for the Rays. I feel like it's a good fit. I think, that's a big part of that area's history. So that would be my spot. I know they had scoped a couple of potential locations there. I think they fell through, and I think now it's looking more like the team will stay in St. Pete if they stay in the area at all. So right now it's just kind of wait and see, and I don't know. I hope there's people smarter than me working on it.
I think they're going to get a deal somewhere there. I mean, there's just I think the way that the Rays have been competitive, their attendance is higher this year. They draw well. They draw in the middle at least for TV. So there is a fan. I mean, people act like there's no fan base for the Rays. There's a big fan base, but it's more spread out than some other places. I'm biased in that way only because of what you're saying. I'd love to see him come to the east side of Tampa because it'd take me about an hour to get there. I'm the west side of Orlando. There, put the ballpark on the east side of Tampa, and I could drive right across I-4 and go see more ball games.
Exactly.
So I'd be happy with that too.
Yeah, they do. They get again, like you said, you were kind of, your persuasions had been swayed a certain way as you were walking into that ballpark. I think it gets trashed.
It really was not. It did not have a poor experience there. I will tell you, I had a good experience. And like you said, maybe the location of St. Petersburg isn't the best from, a fan base geographical standpoint, but the city of St. Petersburg is very nice.
Oh yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
It's certainly not a bad atmosphere for a ballpark. Even if they end up staying in St. Pete, I'd be happy to take the extra 30, 40 minutes, to drive over that way. Just because, you could really build something nice there in a nice location. So won't be disappointed really either way. I just hope they stay somewhere in the general area.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I'd hate to see the team relocate. That's my biggest fear, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, with the population the way it is in Florida, it's so large and
And
so
growing.
much
And
growth.
growing.
And we like to talk about this, David and I, but the number of players from a high school, college, prospect that come out of the state of Florida is incredible.
Mhm.
So more as and it's growing in that way too. So as kids grow up playing baseball in the state of Florida, that would be nice to have to keep a couple major league teams here that they could come play for eventually.
Yeah.
Because it'll be a destination at some point where kids are like, hey, I want to play for the Rays when I grow up because I don't have to leave, my family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'd love to see him stay. So we'll see. I'm in favor of expansion over relocation for
Yeah.
the league. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a little biased on the expansion too. I would like to see from a Charlotte and Nashville because I feel like they're much more drivable for me. That would be my choice.
Yeah, I think Nashville's a good bet. That's that.
Yeah.
If I was asked to place money on something, it would be Nashville. But
Yeah,
that's just a gut feeling. I've got nothing to go on other than just like it seems to make the most sense right now.
totally. I totally
Just
agree.
going back on one thing, because what we talked about before with what are the must do's that somebody going to your site can do. So I did go and checked out the City Field must do's, and I love the fact that you added something which was great, which sometimes fans don't know is running the bases at Shea Stadium. I mean, last time I went, I parked and I said, because I always couldn't find it, right? Because you're always looking around. Oh, it's over here. And the guy says, oh, do you know what the bases are? Oh, yes, I need to find it. And I looked down. I was right standing on top of the mound. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is where Jesse Orozco jumped up, and they jumped on top of him. So a true fan can experience that. So the fact that you added that to that, so when you go to the site to see something like that, it's awesome. I mean, you could have picked anything. You picked that. That was awesome. Bad those little must do's, but that's something that like a true Met fan or Yankee fan to kind of stand in a spot where the previous ball players something had that experience. But then it's kind of weird that it's facing one way and then Citi Field faces this way.
Yeah, they
And I think
changed
someone
it.
said the jet stream or something was better for home runs. I don't know.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, that's to your point. That's one of the things I didn't mention is that also on the site is an entire section for trip planning. We've got a sortable ballpark scheduled that populates only home games. So, if you want to check New York Mets and New York Yankees, it will populate their games on a calendar so you can kind of work your way around when's a good time to go to New York. And then each ballpark's got like a crowdsourced guide that contains some of that info. So, like a true Mets fan raised a hand and said, you got to tell people about these bases out in the parking lot. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a perfect feature though, because that is one of the biggest challenges of planning a ballpark trip is matching up the schedules.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going, let's say, like you said, a clustered area like the Northeast.
Yep.
Right. So you got Baltimore, you got Washington, then you've got Philly, then you've got New York, Boston, all those clustered up the coast. If you're making that trip, how many of those places can you actually hit that have home games? Right. So that's one of the bigger challenges of any trip that you're planning around a ballpark is to figure out who's at home and when. So
Definitely.
that's a great problem solver right there.
Yeah. That was born out of frustration on my own part.
I would imagine. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think you experienced that before.
Yeah.
So I also want to say that I think this episode is perfect timing wise because we are sitting at near the end of May, and this is the time when people will start, really getting involved in their ballpark summer trips. So I hope a lot of people watch this episode and they visit this site because this is going to be your trip maker
Planner, your trip planner for the
trip
summer.
planner. If you're going out to look at ballparks this summer, which I hope all of you are.
Everybody should. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Well, Anna, we really appreciate you coming on today to talk to us about this. It's like I said, awesome topic. The website you've created is very cool. I'm going to go play with it a lot more. I've started my bucket list on there, but I got a lot more to add to it. And of course, some planning to do as well.
Well, I kind of would like to flip the script for a second and ask you guys each,
Oh,
if you don't mind, what's the number one thing on your baseball bucket list?
David, you go first.
Oh, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
I basically want to get to every minor league stadium I can find. I mean, I want to travel. I've gone east. Well, other sense I've traveled northeast all the time to go to New York, and I visit some major league stadiums that way. But I always told my wife I want to travel west, and I actually want to hit like you said, every time I go west, to stop and just hit a stadium, stop and watch a game. I'll let her and my oldest son stay by the pool if they don't want to go, but I'll go with my youngest and I have to watch a game. So that's my bucket list, is hopefully just one day I will hit the 30 stadiums, hopefully. But I would like to see minor league stadiums because there's so many unique ones out there, the logos, the uniforms, and the different things they do within the game. So that's my bucket list. It's just minor league stadiums. And then maybe come back around and go to the Field of Dreams.
I love it. Nice.
Well, I kind of alluded a little bit earlier to some of mine, but I'd say from a major league standpoint, I've been to most in the eastern part of the country. I would say the one out west that I would want to go to the most is Petco in San Diego. That is got so highly rated all the time, and so that one would be my number one kind of MLB park on the other side of the country. And then the other ones, I would say Dudy Noble Stadium in Mississippi State University has got such a reputation as such a unique ballpark experience. We actually had Tanner Allen from that was the hero of the 2021 College World Series on, and I told him, I said that stadium's on the top of my bucket list there. And then also Omaha for the College World Series is also high up there too. So mine, it varies based on what level of baseball we're talking about. I've also heard some cool things about some of the minor league parks that David mentioned. If I were going to name one minor league park I'd like to go to, I would say I can't tell you the name of the ballpark, but it's where the Durham Bulls play.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get to Durham, North Carolina, and witness that atmosphere. This is a big fan of the movie and the whole mystique of that franchise. So North Carolina, I mean, I think you might have had an episode on this with somebody traveling ballparks in North Carolina. But the more I dig into North Carolina, I mean, they don't have a Major League Baseball team there, but minor leagues, summer collegiate leagues, everything. They've got so much baseball in that state. That's kind of, an unsung hero of the baseball world.
Definitely. Baseball Mecca. That's what I like to call it. It's
it really is
everywhere there.
So those are a few of mine.
Yeah.
You have a whole lot more. I'm gonna have to add more to mine. Not tonight, but I'm gonna write, and I'll write to you and I'll let you know all the ones I want to do. I may just put it on the website.
I love that.
Maybe we'll make a wish list up. We'll share. Maybe David and I can work on our bucket list and then share them up on Legends on Deck.
Yeah, well, I guess another bucket list that Brian and I both have combined is covering a game together for the website at a minor league stadium.
Yes. So we want to. That is something that's on our bucket list, is that we want to do a live broadcast from a ballpark. We'll probably, because we meet up from time to time in different parts. He's in Cape Coral, I'm in Winter Garden, which is west of Orlando, and our halfway point is probably where you grew up in Bradenton, or where you spent or you grew up part of your life there. So that's probably our halfway point. So if we meet in Tampa or we meet wherever, we've covered the Florida State League quite a bit on our website. So we're live broadcast is on our bucket list from one of these ballparks.
I love it. I think y'all should do it.
Yeah,
we'll talk over each other. So we have to make sure one is.
We're gonna have to have somebody standing behind us with cue cards, like David, Ryan, David.
Yeah. That's what the Bradenton would be a great place to do that. At a Marauders game would be a great place there. Clearwater is another
Yeah.
one. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Clearwater. Yeah.
I love
There's
that idea.
some.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank
We're
you.
working on it.
Yeah.
It's, like you said, we got it on the bucket list. So
Or Frisco, Texas. I've heard great things about Frisco, Texas.
oh, well, I'll tell you, I'd love to do it.
I have family in Texas, so it's another reason for me to go over there. So
Yeah.
Definitely love to do it. I have not done either ballpark, MLB park in Texas. So those would be high on my list too.
Yeah. Well, let me know when you come through. I'll give you some brewery insight too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we just want to thank our sponsors real quick, EZIP Mortgage and DC3 Bat Company. If you check out our social media, I've recently received a custom-made glove that I ordered from DC3, and it's the official Legends on Deck ball glove. I next broadcast we do, I'm going to have it sitting with me. But it's got the Legends on Deck logo. It's on our Facebook. It's on all our social media accounts. But they did an awesome job with that. Those are. We want to thank them, and we want to thank Anna with Baseball Bucket List. Go out there this summer, make your bucket list, and check out her podcast as well.
Well, thanks to you guys for having me on, David, Brian. I really have enjoyed the time speaking with y'all, and go Mets, go Rays, but mostly go Rays.
Yeah, that's okay. They're on the other sides of the leagues. I'll root for them too. I'm still in Florida, so well, thank you for being here. And one other thing, we're gonna plug our merch page, which Brian is wearing our hats right now, and we got some cool logos that we've designed. So anyone wants to just grab one and help get Legends on Deck out there to further and further along. And if you are going to join the bucket list and put yourself information, take a photo with Legends on Deck shirt at a stadium, and we'll post that as well, and that'll be awesome. But we appreciate you being here, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank y'all.